Alright viewers, next up we're going to do a comparison, and this week it is the difference between the Nissan Rogue and the Nissan Rouge Sport. Now even for someone like me who absolutely loves everything about cars, I actually kind of forgot there were two different models here. And actually a friend of mine has, had the Sport and ended up moving to the actual regular Rogue. So we're going to go over a couple of differences between the two because this might be helpful information for anybody shopping for these vehicles. Now the Nissan Rogue has been out for a few generations now, and at least around here they are everywhere. It's an extremely popular car, both the Sport and the regular Rogue, and it's a very competitive segment with things like the Mazda CX-5, CX-3, RAV4, CR-V, HR-V, and so on. So today we're going to be just talking about these two Nissans, so let's take a look. So the Rogue Sport is on our right here, and the Rogue, we would call the regular model, is on the left. The Sport, as you might have guessed, is slightly smaller and a little bit easier to park and easier to use in the city, whereas the regular Rogue is a little taller, a little more headroom, a little more capacity. So let's talk more about that. The Rogue Sport is less expensive. Those start around $25,000, whereas the normal Rogue starts around $28,000. Now, the regular Rogue has a Nissan's brand new 1.5 liter turbocharged engine, and we'll talk about that more in a minute. And the Rogue Sport has a naturally aspirated 2 liter 141 horsepower engine. So if we look down here in the cargo volume, you can see that there's a lot more cargo volume in the regular Rogue, obviously, because it's a little bigger. Like I was saying, I think if you're in the city and you like something that's easy to park and space is at a premium, the Sport is definitely the vehicle for you. But if you are more into getting kids, bikes, things into your vehicle, I think the regular Rogue might have the upper hand here. So if we look at cargo space overall, we just looked at that up top. Rear legroom is really where these two differ. Obviously, we have 38.5 versus 33.4 inches in the Sport. And then the big one is the cargo space behind the second row. Now, both of these vehicles are 5-seater vehicles, obviously 2 front seats and 3 seats across the second row. Neither of these have a third row, especially not the Sport. So if we go down here, the cargo space behind the second row, 36.5 cubic feet for the regular Rogue and 22.9 for the Rogue Sport. And also the Sport is about a foot shorter, although the wheelbase is fairly similar. It's within 2 inches. I've driven both of these vehicles. They both drive nicely, obviously, and they're comfortable, they're easy to see out of, and they come with all of Nissan's safety features, both of them do. The Rogue Sport has a more conventional 2-liter 4-cylinder non-turbocharged engine with 141 horsepower. And then if you move over to the regular Rogue, it has the 1.5-liter variable compression turbo 3-cylinder engine, 1.5 liters like I mentioned, and 201 horsepower. So in the regular Rogue, we have 225 pound-feet of torque from that 3-cylinder turbocharged 1.5 liter, and then we get 30 miles to the gallon city and 37 highway, which is pretty good considering it's not the smallest SUV in the world. It does have the availability to get all-wheel drive, and with the regular Rogue, you can choose from one of 5 driving modes depending on what you're doing. Sport mode, regular, eco, slippery, and then if you're kind of off-roading sand like this fun guy here going mountain biking. So with Nissan's products, they call it the Safety Shield 360 technologies, and that gives you automatic emergency braking with pedestrian detection, rear automatic braking, blind spot warning, rear cross traffic alert, lane departure warning, and high beam assist. Now these are all great features, especially when you're in an urban environment and you're in a parking lot and there are lots of things going on. You're usually not that you're thinking about what you have to do and you're backing out of a spot. These can all be extremely helpful both on the road and at high and low speeds. Nissan's recently updated the interior on both of the Rogue and the Rogue Sport. We can see we have a nice sporty steering wheel here, actual buttons, which everybody who watches the show know I love. We have a neat, cool shifter down here, wireless charging on some of the higher trim levels. We have all of our AC and heat controls over here, and obviously Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Moving over to the Rogue Sport, a couple of different things about it. Like I mentioned, 141 horsepower and 147 pound-feet of torque. We have 25 to 32 miles per gallon, depending on if you have front wheel or all-wheel drive. That might vary. And if we go down here, I do say the Sport has less room than the regular Rogue, but obviously we can see if you need to pick up a really cool table, it'll fit great. The Sport has a different dash layout and a different center console layout here. With both Rogues, you can get it in the S, the SV, and the SL being the top trim. And both Rogues come with a CVT transmission. Now, if you think the Rogue might fit into your lifestyle and you just want to get down and test drive one, you definitely want to go to Anchor Nissan in Smithfield. That's right on 146. And I would suggest taking both for a drive, a nice long test drive, and see how you fit in them. Check the back seat room, and depending on what you're using it for, I think both of these can be a great choice.